Hi. I have this "Hi, I'm Mike" slide, but I don't think I really need that after that introduction. So an important part of working for Twitter is taking a photo of... All right, we'll see how that turns out. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really fun conference to be part of. So, like they mentioned, my name is Mike, and I've worked in a number of different companies along the West Coast, and I think that might be something different you'll notice in sort of what I'm talking about. Like, my career has very much been shaped in working in the tech industry, and very much the tech industry in the West Coast of the United States. And so when I was thinking about this conference and what design can do, I'm thinking about it through sort of that lens of what is the design, what is the role that design is playing where I've worked. And I guess we'll start with a story about sort of where I've got started in design, and it's helped me sort of think about the role that design plays. I started 9 years ago working for a studio in Los Angeles, a Nokia studio called Insight and Innovation. And the role of the studio was to sort of challenge the different kind of things that Nokia was working on, business models, the products they were making, and really come up with these sort of elaborate visions and concepts for where the company might go, sort of things along the lines of what you're seeing here. Doing these sort of like really interesting sort of touch interfaces and products that connected across your whole house, and it was a lot of fun. Really excited about the work that we did there. Really proud of the work that we did there. But I left the studio after a few years sort of from this sinking feeling of that these visions were just sort of not really going anywhere. And I've talked with other designers who have this feeling too, this sort of, you're imagining, these grand design visions, but you're not doing the design vision. And then, what do you do with that? What have you really, what have you brought and how have you pushed the company? And so I've been sort of thinking about this, the roles of design thinking, design strategy, design fiction. This is something I really care about. This is something I think when I got started in design was really most exciting to me. This sort of imagining futures that didn't exist and helping them, using those to sort of think about where we go next. But like I said, it just sort of this feeling of, well, okay, but are we actually really pushing forward just with these visions sort of in the context of where I was working? And so I come back to this sort of idea of like, well, what is design to me? Like how do we sort of use design to push forward? And I think in some ways a sort of simpler way of approaching design problem solving felt more appealing. It's just design is about making things better for the people that use them. So I have this question of like, what products do you guys love? And if I had a longer presentation, we might actually take some suggestions from the crowd. But I want you to think about that. Is it a product that's in your hand, that's in your pocket, that's maybe it's a car you drive or something you have at home? I like asking this question sometimes on Twitter or sometimes to friends because I want to understand this. I want to understand what products people love. So think about that product. Then I'm going to play this little video, from someone that's obviously been inspiring in my career,
I remember the first time I saw an Apple product. I remember it so clearly because it was the first time I realized when I saw this product, I got a very clear sense of the people that designed it and made it. A big definition of who you are as a designer, it's the way that you look at the world. And I guess it's one of the sort of curses of what you do is that you're constantly looking at something and thinking, why is it like that? Why is it like that and not like this? And so in that sense, you're constantly designing. When we're designing a product, we have to look to different attributes of the product, and some of those attributes will be the materials that it's made from and the form that's connected to those materials. Other issues would be, just physically, how do you connect to the product? a lot of what we seem to be doing in a product like that is actually getting design out the way. And I think when forms develop with that sort of reason, and they're not just arbitrary shapes, it feels almost inevitable. It feels almost undesigned. It feels almost like, well, of course it's that way. I mean, why wouldn't it be any other way?
So, I guess, starting my career and thinking about design vision, I think over time I've sort of pulled back and looking at a lot more now. How do you get to the future by focusing, intensely on the present? And so, if you've seen the video, you're probably familiar with that, that moment and a few others from Johnny that show this like really intense obsession with the problem that he's working on and sort of the crafting of the best possible product that he can make. And I think a lot of us think about Apple as this really visionary company, but a lot of it has just been through this like intense march year by year of making the best possible products they can. So I think that obsession is starting to, at least where I'm working, is starting to change, I think, the way designers are working in design. And that's kind of largely what I'm here to talk about is how designers are sort of reframing their practice along the West Coast to kind of push that obsession more into their work. And one of the things I'm seeing, I'm going to talk about 3 different trends quickly, is just the first one, working in-house. When I got started actually working for a company like Nokia, I felt like a bit of a minority among many of my peers who were sort of going to work for a lot of large consultancies. Working in-house in many ways was not seen as sort of the best place to go work as a designer, and I think that's been shifting quite a bit, and I think it comes from especially where I am, that ability to be as close as possible to the work that's going on and be partnered up with the PMs and engineers that are helping, building the product. Sort of again, using Apple as an example, by having designers in-house sort of focus on that product, sort of, iPod, the several versions of iPod, then iPhone, and the 5 generations of iPhone, and sort of continuing to refine, is a really difficult thing unless you're really close to the people that are also making the product. And I think a lot of that comes from, it's not just, when you're working in-house, it's not just about the design work itself, but how you integrate with the people that are making the product, how you are connected with, the engineers on the floor, the leadership in the company, because you're thinking about how do we, not just what's the next product we make, but how do we change the entire culture of the company? And that, I find, is largely a part of my work as I've been working in-house, is how do you bring design into the culture and make the whole company think in design, with a design methodology. And just sort of a couple quotes here. I think because it's not about that one design solution that is going to push you forward, or that one vision that's going to take the company and just change everything and move you into the future. It's about this continual refinement, generation over generation, to get to that perfect product. And that was my experience at Microsoft, where a lot of people don't really realize, because this product came out a couple of years ago, Windows Phone, and there was this Metro interface. That was about 10 or more years in the making, and I came in at a point in time where we were starting to get a lot of momentum. And I think the most powerful thing of being a part of that was seeing a company as large as Microsoft start to care about design. And it wasn't because of one product, but because we're using books and posters and all kinds of communication to sort of take this design thinking from every engineer, every product person, every business manager, to as many parts of the company as we could. And it was really exciting because you start to have engineers saying something like, hey, that's not Metro, as they're critiquing the product, which is really fun because that means you've embedded this design thinking through the entire company. Another trend that I've seen is just this idea of designers who code. And I think this has been somewhat controversial in interaction design because our designers supposed to do that. But it's not even a question of whether they're supposed to, it's happening. And the reason is you get, again, sort of about getting design as close as possible to the making of the thing. And in software, that is the code. Because the more you understand and think about code as a material, the better you can work with it. Just like in any other sort of discipline, understanding paper and print and plastics and metal and industrial design. And I think there's just an intelligence that you gain around the making of the product as you're connected to it as deeply as doing the code yourself. The last trend I'm seeing is just designers doing it themselves. And there was an interesting example of this. This is a video from a product called Paper by 53, where these guys were actually inside of Microsoft, and they weren't seeing, I think, the movement on this idea that they would have preferred. And so they just went and they did it themselves. And this is a really sort of powerful thing as a designer, to think that, like, hey, like, I can make this thing happen. I don't need to sort of be held up by whatever obstacles I'm seeing in my way. And being able to jump out and just go make that thing yourself. And there's many examples, up and down the West Coast of designers going out and building their own ideas. From Pinterest and Vimeo and Airbnb, which is a very popular example. Now, that is not limited to software either. 3D printing, obviously, I think this is a really exciting thing, and I think in the Netherlands this has been quite big. But I think what this allows is, designers of any discipline can sort of jump out and build whatever they're imagining. Now, what's exciting too is it's not even about just building the thing and building the prototype. You have platforms like Kickstarter or Blurb for books. And then sites like Etsy, which basically mean, as a designer, if you have an idea, there's really not much stopping you from going out and building that thing. From getting the funding on a platform like Kickstarter and then going and making it and putting it out there and selling it yourself. This is really powerful. This is not something that was really commonly available even just a few years ago. So this is sort of, that idea, like originally with my talk, this idea of thinking to making. If you have something in mind, it doesn't just need to be a design vision. You can go make that and bring that to the world. So getting back to this idea of what design can do, last year I worked on a video documentary of interaction design with some of my colleagues, and we went out and we actually asked sort of ideas along the lines of that, of what is interesting to you as a designer? What are you working on right now? What's inspiring you? And we went and asked a number of designers working in interaction design, and this is a short clip that sort of speaks to
So I think
what's on
interaction
people's
design
minds.
is at a pretty interesting inflection point right now. A lot of the models and a lot of the ideas and a lot of the principles are in place. And a lot of the hard work today is not just commercializing them so that we can rent a movie or that we can hold up our phone and find out what music is playing in a bar. We're figuring out how to drive them to more and more mundane, meaningful parts of our lives. Political systems, into large organizations.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in things like energy and environment.
Things like energy. It's a fascinating field that interaction design, I think, is starting to really penetrate. You can't really rearrange the grid that easily. You can't really move buildings and apartments and subway stations around, but you can build a shared layer on top of it through behavior and through the right contextual information that can really shift the way we use those resources.
It's also going into the medical industry, wearable devices to track your heart rates and activity you do. All that kind of stuff I think is really, really exciting and amazing.
Moving even healthcare from a place of being this one-time visit with a doctor where you simply go in only when you feel sick or you sort of have an ailment, to this perpetual ongoing thing and this ongoing conversation in a very lightweight way.
You might be able to help frontline health workers, people who don't have a great deal of training. Why couldn't you take a picture of it, take a sample of it, and have the rest of the complexity of that all hidden, but that immediate piece of information when you need it? But the network is sampling the world and knowing what's cropping up where and able to match and find patterns and anticipate outbreaks of diseases. We're not just trying to sort of take those disruptive technologies I was talking about and push them out to the periphery. We're trying to now collect out of the periphery a much richer set of what's going on in the world so that we can learn as a society and optimize and evolve the right systems and services.
All over the world, things are changing at a speed that is, kind of both terrifying and exhilarating. I think one of the exciting things about the design industry and the creative process is that they can help. And I think what we need is for designers who can be embedded in the topics that are really important right now, and for there to be a better synergy between design and business design and social change design and entrepreneurship. They can't solve them on their own, but they can certainly help us to come up with more creative solutions.
So that's the next big, exciting, fun thing, I think. and have a huge positive impact on that on people's lives.
Now, you've already seen examples of designers working in this, in this conference in the last 2 days, and I think sort of thinking about the middle half of my talk is sort of what's happening is designers sort of moving from, I think, helping shape where businesses are going sort of from the outside, like on a more of a consultant basis, and moving deeply inside to things that they care about. So for me, communication, and then I think issues that are sort of brought up in the video like health, and how do, as a company, do you sort of help people, how do you promote a more active, healthy lifestyle, responsible use of energy, and even just better use of our civic spaces, and more complex issues like war and government. But I think that the quote that's most important to me in that video was just this idea of designers can help. We play a large role, but we can't fix everything. But the best way to get involved is to pick the problem that you care about, and get as close to it as possible. And for me, that means getting inside the companies that I think are working on the things that I think are really important and I want to help change, and get obsessed about it. Live with it day after day. Spend years in that company understanding the problem, from every possible angle, and then think, make. So it's not about just a grand vision and going, here's where we need to go. It's constantly going back and forth. It's the vision and the craftsmanship together on a daily basis. And that's all I really wanted to talk about today. Thank you.